What if the greatest sign that a man is deeply attached to you isn't, "I love you," but something so quiet that almost everyone misses it? Most people spend years looking for love in grand gestures, passionate words, or constant attention. Yet the deepest emotions rarely announce themselves. They reveal themselves through patterns the conscious mind cannot fully control. A man can say all the right things and still feel nothing. Another man may struggle to express his emotions, yet every action quietly reveals where his heart truly lives. The difference lies in what happens beneath the surface, where genuine attachment is formed, long before it is spoken. The human psyche never hides the truth forever. Sooner or later, the unconscious leaves unmistakable clues. Once you understand this hidden psychological principle, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Today, we're uncovering the one sign that almost always appears when a man becomes emotionally attached. And once you recognize it, you'll be able to distinguish genuine emotional affection from temporary attraction with remarkable clarity. Most people believe emotional attachment begins the moment someone falls in love, but the human mind rarely works in such a sudden or dramatic way. What appears to be an instant connection is often the final result of countless unnoticed moments quietly shaping the inner world. Long before a man admits his feelings, even to himself, his unconscious has already started, assigning special meaning to one person. This process is slow, almost invisible, yet incredibly powerful. It is not driven by logic alone or by physical attraction alone. Instead, it develops through repeated emotional experiences that gradually transform familiarity into significance. The more meaningful these experiences become, the more deeply his inner world begins to organize itself around that person. At first, he may not even understand why certain conversations stay with him long after they have ended. A simple smile, a shared laugh, or an unexpected moment of understanding may replay in his thoughts without invitation, while he continues with work, family, and daily responsibilities. Fragments of these interactions quietly return to his mind. He isn't forcing these memories to appear. They rise naturally, because the unconscious mind has decided they matter. What once seemed ordinary begins carrying emotional weight, and this shift often happens before he consciously recognizes any romantic feelings. As emotional investment grows, his attention changes in subtle but meaningful ways. He begins noticing details that others overlook. He remembers how you react under stress, what makes you laugh without trying, or the small stories you casually shared weeks ago. These details are not stored because he is making an effort to impress you. They remain because his mind has started treating them as valuable. The unconscious naturally protects what it considers emotionally important, and memory becomes one of its quietest expressions. This growing awareness also changes how he experiences everyday life. Places, songs, or ordinary events begin reminding him of you without any deliberate intention. He may hear a phrase you once used, or pass by a familiar cafe and immediately think of a conversation you shared there. These mental associations reveal that his inner world is creating emotional connections beyond conscious control. The mind is weaving another person into the fabric of daily experience, making them part of its emotional landscape. During this stage, he often becomes more curious than he realizes. Instead of focusing only on appearances or first impressions, he starts wanting to understand your thoughts, values, fears, and dreams. Genuine attachment naturally seeks depth, because the unconscious is searching for emotional understanding rather than temporary excitement. He becomes interested in what shaped you, what motivates you, and what brings you peace. This curiosity is different from simple attraction. Attraction asks, "How do I get closer?" Attachment quietly asks, "Who are you when no one else is watching?" There is another subtle transformation that many people fail to notice. As emotional attachment deepens, he begins comparing new experiences with the emotional connection he has already formed. Conversations with others may feel less engaging because they lack the sense of understanding he experiences with you. This comparison rarely happens on purpose. It is simply the mind recognizing where it feels most emotionally alive. Over time, Your presence becomes a reference point against which many other interactions are measured. Perhaps the most fascinating part of this process is that it cannot be rushed or manufactured. Real emotional attachment develops through authenticity, consistency, and meaningful emotional exchanges. It grows in moments of honesty, shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and quiet understanding. The unconscious cannot be persuaded by appearances alone. It responds to experiences that feel emotionally true. That is why genuine attachment often grows slowly, but once it takes root, it becomes remarkably resilient. Before any declaration of love is ever spoken, the deepest part of the mind has already begun, making space for someone who now feels impossible to ignore. Many people assume that when a man becomes emotionally attached, the first signs will be dramatic displays of affection or constant declarations of love. Yet the deepest forms of attachment usually reveal themselves in much quieter ways. One of the clearest signs is his growing desire to create emotional safety. This change is rarely planned or performed. It emerges naturally because, as emotional attachment deepens, another person's emotional world begins to matter almost as much as his own. The unconscious no longer sees the relationship as simply a source of pleasure or excitement. Instead, it begins treating it as something valuable that deserves protection and care. This shift becomes visible in the way he listens. Rather than waiting for his turn to speak or rushing to solve every problem, he pays attention to what lies beneath your words. He notices the hesitation in your voice, the silence after a difficult day, or the smile that doesn't quite reach your eyes. These subtle observations are not acts of performance. They reflect genuine emotional investment. When someone truly matters, the mind naturally becomes more sensitive to changes in their emotional state. He also becomes more patient during moments of misunderstanding. Every relationship experiences disagreements, but emotional attachment changes the goal of those conversations. Instead of trying to win every argument, he becomes more interested in restoring understanding. His focus slowly shifts from proving himself right to protecting the connection itself. This doesn't mean he always agrees or never makes mistakes. It means the relationship becomes more important than his pride. That quiet adjustment reveals a profound psychological transformation. Another meaningful change appears in the way he responds to your vulnerabilities. When emotional attachment is genuine, your fears and insecurities are no longer viewed as weaknesses to criticize. Instead, they become parts of you that deserve compassion. He becomes careful with his words, because he understands that trust is built through consistency, not perfection. Even when he cannot remove your struggles, he wants you to feel less alone while facing them. This desire to provide reassurance is one of the strongest expressions of emotional safety. The unconscious mind also influences his protective instincts in subtle ways. Protection is not always physical. More often, it is emotional. He avoids unnecessary actions that could damage your trust. He becomes thoughtful before making decisions that might affect your feelings. He starts considering how his behavior influences your emotional well-being, even when you are not present. These choices often happen automatically because emotional attachment has changed the way he experiences responsibility. One of the most overlooked signs is his willingness to remain present during uncomfortable moments. Temporary attraction often disappears when life becomes complicated. Genuine attachment behaves differently. When difficulties arise, he does not immediately search for an escape. Instead, he tries to understand, communicate, and remain emotionally available. This willingness to stay present during uncertainty reflects a deeper level of commitment than words alone could ever express. As emotional safety grows, authenticity becomes easier for both people. He gradually lowers his own emotional defenses because he no longer feels the need to maintain a perfect image. He becomes more comfortable admitting uncertainty, sharing personal fears, or revealing experiences he once kept hidden. This openness is not a sign of weakness. It is evidence that trust has begun replacing emotional self-protection. The unconscious recognizes that genuine connection requires honesty, and honesty naturally invites vulnerability. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of emotional safety is that it cannot be demanded or forced. It develops slowly through repeated experiences of kindness, respect, reliability, and understanding. Every small act of consistency strengthens the invisible bond between two people. Over time, emotional attachment transforms love from something that is simply felt into something that is quietly lived, creating a relationship where both hearts feel understood, accepted, and secure, without needing constant reassurance. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that emotions are measured by beautiful words alone. Words can inspire, comfort, and create hope, but they can also be spoken without deep conviction. The human mind has an extraordinary ability to say what is expected, especially when seeking approval or avoiding conflict. Yet genuine emotional attachment follows a different path. It reveals itself through repeated actions that remain steady over time. When a man is truly emotionally attached, his behavior begins to reflect his inner reality more consistently than his promises ever could. The unconscious mind communicates through patterns rather than performances. Anyone can create a memorable moment, offer a heartfelt compliment, or make an impressive promise during the excitement of new attraction. Maintaining the same level of care, however, requires something much deeper. It requires emotional investment that has become part of one's character. This is why consistency is one of the strongest indicators of genuine attachment. It is difficult to pretend day after day because authentic behavior eventually replaces with carefully planned impressions. You may notice that he continues showing up even when there is no obvious reward. He checks on you after a difficult day, remembers important events without being reminded, and follows through on commitments he has made. These actions often appear ordinary, yet they carry tremendous psychological meaning. The unconscious values reliability because trust cannot survive without it. Every time he keeps his word, he reinforces a silent message that says, "You matter enough for me to remain dependable." This consistency also appears during emotionally neutral moments. It is easy to be attentive during birthdays, celebrations, or romantic evenings. The deeper test comes during ordinary days when life feels routine. An emotionally attached man continues expressing care even when there is no special occasion. A simple message asking how your day went, remembering something you mentioned weeks earlier, or offering support without being asked, demonstrates that his attention is not temporary. His actions become woven into everyday life, rather than reserved only for dramatic moments. There is also an important psychological difference between obligation and willingness. Someone acting from obligation often appears present while secretly feeling burdened. Their kindness gradually becomes inconsistent because it is driven by external pressure rather than internal desire. Genuine attachment feels different. The motivation comes from within. He chooses to invest time, attention, and emotional energy because doing so feels meaningful, not because he believes he has to earn affection or avoid disappointment. Another revealing sign is how he behaves when no one is watching. Character is rarely defined by public gestures. It is shaped by private decisions made without applause or recognition. He treats you with the same respect in quiet moments as he does in public. His kindness does not disappear when there is nothing to gain. This quiet integrity reflects emotional maturity because the unconscious seeks coherence between values and behavior. A divided character creates inconsistency, while genuine attachment encourages alignment between thought, feeling, and action. Even during periods of stress, consistency remains significant. Every person experiences moments of exhaustion, frustration, or uncertainty. Emotional attachment does not eliminate these challenges, but it influences how someone responds to them. Instead of withdrawing completely or abandoning the relationship at the first sign of difficulty, he makes an effort to reconnect after conflict, communicate honestly, and restore emotional closeness. His commitment becomes visible not because life is always easy, but because he continues choosing the relationship despite life's inevitable challenges. Over time, these repeated actions create something more valuable than excitement. They create trust. Trust is not built through a single grand gesture or a passionate declaration. It grows through countless small moments that quietly confirm reliability, respect, and emotional presence. When actions remain aligned with words, the unconscious recognizes authenticity, and that steady pattern becomes one of the clearest signs that emotional attachment has taken deep and lasting root. As emotional attachment grows, one of the quietest yet most powerful transformations begins to take place inside a man's mind. His thoughts gradually stop revolving around only his own future. Without consciously deciding to do so, he starts imagining a life in which another person naturally belongs. This is not about losing his independence or abandoning his personal ambitions. Instead, it reflects a psychological expansion. His inner world becomes large enough to include someone else's presence, needs, and dreams alongside his own. In the beginning, this change is almost impossible to notice. It appears in small decisions rather than dramatic declarations. He may come across a place he would like to visit and immediately think, she would enjoy this. He hears a song that reminds him of a conversation you once shared, or he reads something interesting and instinctively wants to tell you about it. These moments happen without planning, because the unconscious mind has already begun weaving you into his daily thoughts. Your presence becomes part of the way he experiences the world. Over time, this quiet shift influences bigger decisions as well. Before making important choices, he naturally considers how they might affect the relationship. It is no longer only about what benefits him in the present moment. He begins asking himself whether a decision supports the future he is slowly imagining. This does not mean he seeks permission for every choice or gives up his individuality. Rather, it means your well-being has become part of the equation. The mind no longer calculates life using only one perspective. Psychologically, this reflects a movement away from isolation and toward emotional integration. Human beings are naturally shaped by the relationships they value most. When emotional attachment becomes genuine, the boundary between my life and our life begins to soften. This does not erase personal identity. Instead, it allows two separate identities to influence one another while remaining whole. Healthy attachment is not about dependence. It is about connection that strengthens rather than limits both people. This inner transformation also changes the way he defines success and happiness. Achievements that once felt satisfying on their own may begin to feel incomplete if they cannot be shared with someone who truly matters. Joy naturally seeks connection. He finds himself wanting to celebrate victories together, discuss challenges together, and create memories that become part of a shared story. These desires arise because emotional attachment teaches the mind that life's most meaningful experiences gain depth when they are experienced with another person. Another subtle sign appears in the way he listens to your dreams and goals. Instead of treating them as separate from his own life, he begins encouraging them and imagining how they fit into a shared future. Your personal growth no longer feels unrelated to him. He wants to see you succeed because your happiness has become emotionally meaningful to him. This support is not driven by obligation or expectation. It grows from a genuine sense of partnership that develops naturally as emotional attachment deepens. Even during periods of uncertainty, his vision of the future continues, including you. Challenges may create fear or doubt, but they do not immediately erase the place you hold in his thoughts. He searches for solutions rather than escape because the relationship has become part of the future he hopes to protect. This quiet persistence reveals emotional commitment far more clearly than romantic speeches ever could. Perhaps the deepest truth is that real attachment changes not only how a man feels in the present, but also how he imagines tomorrow. His plans, hopes, and decisions gradually begin reflecting the presence of someone who has become emotionally significant without fully realizing when it happened. The language of the mind slowly changes from I to we, and in that silent transformation lies one of the clearest signs that the heart has formed a bond capable of enduring both time and change. As we've discovered today, genuine emotional attachment is rarely announced through dramatic words or grand gestures. It quietly reveals itself through consistent actions, emotional safety, unwavering presence,